Welcome back to the Boundary Corner Podcast. My name is Curtis Wilson.
I'm Brian Siegler. What's up, buddy? How you doing? Wednesday night,
Folks. Press and record to go through a ton of stuff tonight, man. Me and Brian, we sat on the production meeting for 2.5 hours today, getting all this stuff together.
It was fun. It took some time, but it was a lot of stuff to kind of arrange and digest, so we can make sure that we were getting everything to you guys that we think you need. So,
yep. And guys out there, we are pressing record on Wednesday night. We're going to be doing some streams on Wednesday night too. And during the weekday, Wednesday nights are going to be nights we're pressing record. We're going to start dropping on Thursdays now. So as the season gets on, you've got a couple days to press play on any of our formats to give a listen to the game. So in a way, Brian, I guess you could say this is the beginning of our fall camp. Get used to Wednesday nights.
We're kind of breaking ourselves in as we start for the season. As you guys know, we're going to be going live after every game in the season. Those episodes will probably drop on Monday in full. Give you a couple days to digest those. We're going to be back in the booth again on Wednesday. Drop it on Thursday. Give you a couple days to digest those before it's game time. So should be a pretty good format for you guys. Give you something to have twice a week, but enough time to kind of digest both and not overwhelm you with content here.
Exactly. This is also a move to save me and Brian's sleeping hours, because me and Brian were talking the other week and we're like, great doing it on Thursday. The issue with doing it on Thursday is normally there's some type of football game on, which after we finish recording, we're looking at it, we're watching, we're talking back and forth. The next thing you know, we've downed 4 to 6 beers. And then the next thing you know, it's 12:30 and we have to be at work. And we both have to be up early to get our kids ready.
See, Curtis said 12:30, but he's really meaning 1:30.
Yeah, really, by the time.
I mean, there's been several nights where I'm like, okay, well, I've stayed up this long. I might as well go ahead and do everything I want to do to this recording so it can get out first thing instead of waiting until the morning. So,
exactly. So this was a move that is for the listener to give you guys multiple days to download the content, take a listen, but it's also for our bodies, because as we were joking, Brian, if you ever do anything on Thursday night, and it doesn't matter whether you were in college or now as we are in our 30s with kids and real jobs, Friday's still the carrot. You feel like it's okay. I can go on 3 hours of sleep. Tomorrow's Friday. The weekend's after that.
Yeah, I can make it 8 hours. I can, punch in, punch out, and then if I need to get some extra sleep, I got that opportunity. If I need to do a little power nap before I, head out on a Friday night, I can do that. I mean, that's what it's all about, whether you're 20 or 40. You can always make that excuse to get a little foul on Thursday night, because Friday's always going to be a short one for you, or at least it feels that way.
Exactly. And when you legitimately do that every weekend in the fall, plus obviously Saturday nights we're up late anyway, recording, watching the late games. And then
if you like me sometimes, if y'all remember from last season, sitting on a deck, freezing my ass off,
exactly,
in Gatlinburg, recording the post-game podcast.
Exactly. Hilarious. All right. Well, tonight, guys, what we're going to be looking at is we are going to be looking at current camp battles for the season. Obviously, we had press conferences last week. Media got access. Shout out some of the info. Credit Andy Bitter, Mike Nizolik, Mike Barber, amongst other guys. We're going to be getting into that. Before we jump onto that, we have had a few commitments since we last sat with you guys. So let's start and take a look at those guys and one other big subject that broke just the other day. Let's start with DeAndre Martin out of Life Christian Academy here in the RVA. DeAndre originally from Durham, so he's ranked with the North Carolina recruits. He is ranked 21, so a top 25 player from down there. 3-star rated as an 87 by 247. And he is a hoss, 6'3.5", about 290 pounds. And Man, looking here, a solid offer list. You're looking at Florida State, Tennessee, South Carolina, and UVA all offered as well. So had interest from multiple schools. Brian, what did you see from his tape?
This is a big kid, and I think we talk about getting some of these new pipelines. This is definitely one that we need to get in with Life Christian Academy. But I like the way Martin plays. He's got good size. Kind of a good first step for a guy that big, especially at the high school level. So I like what he's bringing to the table. I think an 87 is probably about right in terms of a rating for him. I would put him kind of as that high 3-star range. So I think 247 is probably right on the money there. Could be 86 to 88 was kind of the range I was expecting. So 87 came right in the middle there. And, we're looking, I don't know if he's going to get enough ratings from the other venues to really to pull that composite rating out there. But 87 solid. I like the kid. I'm excited to get him in, and I love that we're still focusing on these big kids coming out of the high school ranks and not some of the undersized guys that we've been looking at before. Pushing 6'4", pushing 295. That's exactly what you want from an interior defensive lineman.
Absolutely. Primary recruiters were Ryan Smith and J.C. Price, and essentially beat out South Carolina and Shane for this one. So, again, solid offer list, solid size at a uprising sort of prep school here in the RVA Life Christian Academy. They've got quite a few guys. Looks like they're building some down there. So definitely a good way to start the pipeline there. Now, Brian, just a few short hours ago, we got another commitment.
Yes, we did. Mansour Delaney. Yeah, Mansour Delaney. Yeah, that was a pretty big one too. Yeah. I know you got the measurables there. You can go ahead and read those off for us.
Yeah, I mean, corner 6'1", 180 pounds, so solid cornerback size there. Number 15 player in Maryland, rating an 86. But we know about lower star ranked kids coming out of Maryland, especially at the cornerback position. And pretty solid offer list, with, obviously us, BC, Louisville, again, another UVA offer. We had our last battle with Maryland there, which is to me a good win. Mike Loxley's been recruiting very well done at Maryland the last couple of years, and he is a hell of a recruiting head coach. So what are you seeing for Mansour after he delayed us an hour?
Well, word is he didn't delay us. The guy doing his edit delayed us. He was waiting on an edit. So ended up being about an hour and 15 minutes later than anticipated. Dropped somewhere around 6:15, 6:20. Yeah, he was aiming for a 5 o'clock announcement originally. So, I'll say this before I get into what I see on tape. Winning the battles against the South Carolinas and the Marylands,
you always say
it's what we've got to do consistently.
Yes, we do.
We're going to lose a few here and there to the Blue Bloods. We can't lose commits that we sit well with to programs that we are level with or above in terms of overall talent and prestige. So getting these wins, regardless of what you think about the individual player, is still a good thing. So I say that to say this. Looking at Delaney's tape, I like the way he plays from a physical standpoint. Does a really good job redirecting receivers, getting them off their path. Probably is going to need to work on kind of turning hips and making sure that if he's not able to get any sort of physical element at the snap of the football, that he's in the right position throughout the entirety of the route. But overall, I think he's a guy that can potentially contribute to us in the future. So I like this pickup. It's not necessarily moving the needle for us, but at the same time, it's a solid pickup and the type of pickup we need to consistently go out there and win.
Absolutely. And it's also a region of the country we need to continue to grow the relationships with, and we need to get these type players. You go back 25 years ago and you take a look at that 95 team, and I know that's a long time ago, folks, but there were a lot of Maryland kids The Fullers are from Maryland. We've always had a decent pipeline up there. Really big when Billy Height was there with the Matha. I feel like Billy could walk in there and just about get any player he wanted. But it's having that whole piece, because we always talk about what's a recruiting blueprint, right? You can't get 20 guys from Virginia and sit on that. It's getting, as Brian always wants, 3 or 4 in the top 10, 6 to 8 in the top 20 in Virginia, and then pick 1 or 2 off from Maryland, 2 or 3 off from North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida. And now with inroads in Texas, pick 1 or 2 off there, and occasionally from somewhere else in that region. That's how you build a program like Virginia Tech.
You want 45% or so from Virginia, and you want at least 4 of those guys to be top 15 players.
Yep. That's what you want.
Preferably 2 of them to be top 10. And then you kind of go from there. I mean, we could fill the team with Virginia kids every year, but at this point, the way other schools are recruiting, we do well, but we still wouldn't get to where we need to be. So we still need to cast that net, especially to those areas that we sit well with historically, like Maryland, like Duval, like some of the areas in Georgia that we've kind of started to carve out a path in, like the Triad. I mean, we've done really well in the Triad of late. So that's where we. I mean, if you're talking outside of Virginia, that's where we need to focus. Like Texas is great. We get a couple guys from there every cycle. That's fine, but you still got to cultivate those traditional pipelines that you have established since the early '90s.
Absolutely. And taking a look here, I mean, we have a class of 21 so far, and 8 are from Virginia. So they're right in that range that you're talking about, Brian, about 45% from the state. And then again, I'm just looking here, and you got talk about the Triad, Xavier Simmons. You got a couple guys from Texas. You got some Pennsylvania guys. You got some Georgia guys. You got some South Carolina guys. So this is the blueprint that should have never stopped, but it did. But we'll digress on that maybe later one time. All right. Other big news this week that broke, and I'm sure everybody's heard it by now, Whit Babcock gets an extension to 2029.
Mm-hmm.
That is a long time away.
Yeah.
Did the math, Brian. Our sons will be driving when Whit's contract is up.
This is accurate, yeah.
So, as far as it goes, what are your thoughts? I mean, what do you think with Whit so far in his first 7 years at Virginia Tech?
So I think there's kind of 2 angles to approach this, and the first is going to be I'll separate it by how he's done in terms of hiring and managing talent for the athletic department, and then I'll break it down in terms of overall athletic mission. So on that first piece, outside of football, he's done as good as probably any AD in the country in terms of getting coaches in with talent, getting Olympic sports and non-revenue sports competitive across the board. He's done a damn good job at that. And say what you will about Fuente, but that wasn't necessarily a bad hire when it happened. It wasn't the preferred hire, but it wasn't a bad hire. It hasn't worked out, but hindsight's 2020. So I'm not going to say that it was a whiff. I'm going to say that he probably had some options that may have been a better fit that he passed on, but there wasn't any red flags that said Fuente would have been a bad hire when that hire was made. So it is what it is at this point from that perspective. Now, from a athletic department mission standpoint, I think that's where this comes into the most play, especially with Reach for Excellence launching. And regardless of what happens with Fuente, whether he's gone after a season or 2 or whether he rides out the remainder of his contract, I think overall they've said, you've done well enough where we're going to let you hire another football coach.
Yeah,
you're going to get one more shot at this while you're here. based on your overall track record, we trust you to potentially do better this time in terms of finding a fit. And I think, I mean, overall, I'm not gonna say Fuente's a bad fit. Just I think Fuente with necessarily the way he came in, but I think Fuente is a bad fit in terms of the type of coach that fans wanted or expected coming off of Beamer. I think he did a good job of respecting some of the traditions and things about Virginia Tech coming in, but he didn't kind of get the nuances of what the fan base is expected from a coach.
That's 100% true. You go from Frank, who was just at that point in time, and even up through that point in time, was lovable grandpa figure. Even if you go back when we were younger, he was. You hear people that met him; he was a very approachable person. Where Fuente is not. And could that change with Fuente? Maybe, maybe not. If you get 12 wins a year, yeah, it would change real quick because everybody would love you regardless of what happened. But the Fuente hire at the time was a home run.
Yeah.
It was like 2 or 3 guys out there, and he was one of them you had to get, and we got one of them. Now, what's happened subsequently is not good, especially the last 3 seasons, not the first 2, because people jump on and say, well, he extended him after we were 19-8. We were 19-8, and we were on the doorstep of beating Clemson in the ACC title game, like on the doorstep. If that happens in 16, the narrative changes, but he had to lock him down because you knew bigger programs were going to come sniffing. Now, overall, the athletic department, I mean, everything's competing. Everything.
Yep.
Everything's competing at the NCAA level. You know, you had softball make it to super regionals. You had so many guys in wrestling make it. Track and field, outstanding, won the ACC again. Baseball had a heck of a run until the bullpen just forgot how to play baseball. But so many things are doing well. Soccer's ranked again. Soccer has been to a Final Four, I think since Witt's been here. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong about that, but they've had success.
Yep.
He's been given the opportunity because he's built everything right. Where Witt made his mistake, and this is where we're in with Fuente is, and you've said it numerous times to me, and I'm sure you've said it to other folks. He came in and he cleaned up the other stuff first instead of paying attention to football first. Now, once he realized that what was going on in football, he had to do something with, he has got on that fast. The facilities upgrade, the dining hall upgrade, the student dorms. It was like 17 happened and then 18 happened and then kind of realized like, okay, we're behind in things. He put the hammer down and he's gotten caught back up. And you know, do we sit here and say if he starts spending that money in 14 on the football program when he first comes in, are we where we are? We don't know. We can speculate and say, no, we'd have better facilities, easier sales. We wouldn't have had the run-in with Baylor and all that stuff, whatever. But overall, he's put everything else on good footing, and now he is focused on the football program, and that's what's got to be done.
Absolutely. And, you know, we can look and pick apart things and everything else. But, I mean, looking back at 2014, at that point, did we look at what was happening as a trend or as a blip?
Blip.
So, but then you had 14, you had 15,
but then
you had Frank gone, and then you had Witt maybe thinking new head coach might be enough to right the ship long enough for me to get these other pieces in place.
And it was.
And not see a drop off. It was good for 2 years. It wasn't good for the 4 or 5 he needed to start getting these things in place. So not saying that was the mindset, but trying to think about it from a strategic plan standpoint, that might have been kind of the angle he was going at, and just things didn't quite hang on long enough in both the pre-Fu era and the since Fu era to really make it look like, you know, the design that he had in his head at the time.
It's like the early Fu era, and then 18 was the mid Fu era, and we're part of the late Fu era. And the question is, this season, obviously, what saves his job? And I know we're going to probably argue that all season with people, Brian, but what saves his job? I know I've got a number in my head. You've got a number in your head. We'll be revealing that in a few weeks. And so who knows?
That's going to be the interesting thing because in for some people it might be a moving target depending on what the wins and the losses look like, and for some people it might be if you don't hit this benchmark or that benchmark, I think you should be gone. So it's going to be different for different people, and
That's Witt's
we
decision.
look forward to having some of you guys discuss this with us
Yes,
as we shake down some of these wins and losses this season, because I'm sure at some point that topic's going to come up, whether it's
every week
for good or ill.
Every week it's going to come up. Every week. All right, now guys, before we get into looking at what's going on with camp, depth, and all that, we are going to go take a quick pause for a message from our digital partners. All right, Brian, let's start it out here. Let's start on the defensive side of the ball. Let's take a look at the defensive ends first. And I don't think this is going to shock anybody, per the reports we're seeing out there. Mari Barno, Taiwan Garbett up in the first group. Obviously, Jay Ham during the presser mentioned last week, Barno's just scratching the surface of his ability. And he thinks that he's going to put pressure on offenses that have to adjust to him, which is going to make things easier for Garbett and the rest of the defensive line and probably the rest of the whole defense.
Yep.
And I agree completely with Ham on that.
Yeah, I think that was a good assessment. I mean, the type of just the physicality and the speed and the athleticism that he brings, they're going to be shading protection his way, chipping with tight ends. That's going to potentially take an extra guy out of a route, at least in the early part, so that tight end now becomes more or less a check down type option and not somebody running a seam or any other kind of complex route in the middle of the defense for us. So there's a bunch of things that can happen from that, aside from just the trickle down of guy like Jordan Williams not getting a double team, Garbett having one-on-one on the other side. Like there's just so many things that opens up and takes some pressure off those other guys. So having Barno be able to take another step is going to be important this year, because we talked about how much of a step he took from week one to the final week of the season, not really having a true fall camp to prepare, and not really having the ability to practice each week on the position like he wanted to. So, and he even mentioned himself, I mean, this has been kind of the first off season in a long time for him where he's been 100% healthy going into the start of a season. So I think that's going to play a big factor for him as well. And he's obviously with some of the things last year, he's dealing with some of the expectations that have been put on him. We're talking about that right now. I mean, in what we're discussing right now, we're putting some expectations on him. But he talked about keeping that kind of a head down mentality and just kind of, tunnel vision, making sure that he's focusing on the right things as he heads into the season. So that's going to be big, and hoping to see some big things from him this year, no doubt.
Oh, no doubt. And hearing those words out of his mouth during his presser, last week was really good to hear, especially about the off season, because, we mentioned, him being healthy for the first time. Well, this is really his first full off season as an end.
Yep.
I mean, he didn't get spring last year. We know how jacked up camp was. So he's getting full spring. He's getting full fall. He's got Bill. He's got JC, really tenured guys to teach him, which is great because you've seen those guys and their work and what they produced on the field, which is awesome.
Yep.
Now, Brian, Eli Adams, Jalen Griffin running with the twos. Obviously, the defensive end position was really hurt by the Alec Bryant, Justin Beatles, and, Wooden transfers. I think Jalen Griffin might have something. A little shocked to see Eli Adams up there. But, again, that's what we're running with right now. And you've got some of the freshmen, I have a feeling, are going to be sneaking and sniffing around trying to crack that two deep along with Wilfred Panay.
Look to see probably a couple guys in there in the freshman class, either popping two deep or rotating in there with a three deep. The big question is, does Belmar get his conditioning back, and is he healthy enough with the issues he's been dealing with
Big,
from the end of last season
big key.
to be able to be a big rotational factor for us this year? If he is, then that's going to help us, because that means a guy like Eli Adams is probably sliding into the kind of the three deep and not the two deep.
Yeah. And then you got like Cole Nelson, who just looks like a 25-year-old man right now, not an 18-year-old kid as a freshman in college. What can they do? Again, what Wilford can do. We mentioned just a couple weeks ago with the transfer. He played defensive end, and he racked up some stats at the Preparatory Academy in Connecticut, so it's going to be really interesting there. All right, let's stay on the defensive line, Brian. Let's take a look at defensive tackle. Were you shocked to see Jordan Williams and Mario Kendricks as the first team out there?
Not super shocked. Seeing Kendricks out there instead of Pollard wasn't too shocking. They've kind of been kind of the 2A and 2B D tackles for me. I think what they're probably going with is having with Jordan and Mario, you got, even though with Pollard putting on a little bit of weight in the offseason, those guys are more or less kind of the same body type, with Williams dropping a little weight this offseason and Kendricks bumping up just a hair. That gives you a little bit more flexibility with, slides across the defensive front, almost having an interchangeable 1 and 3 technique. Whereas with your second unit there with Pollard and Josh Fuga, you have more defined roles where Pollard is absolutely a 3 technique and Fuga is absolutely that 1 technique. So that's probably where they're heading with that type of alignment. So I have no problem with Mario up there versus Pollard, but all those guys are going to get run. We talk about Bill Tierlink's style here. He's going to rotate at least 2 sets of guys across that defensive line, if not 3. So, first team, second team, I mean, the difference in snap count is going to be minimal.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that we had mentioned, me and you talking earlier there during our production meeting, was you can bring Pollard in with Jordan, let Jordan play the 1. You can bring Fuga in at the 1, let Jordan play the 3, or bring Fuga in and let Mario play the 3. And you have some mix and match options where you talked about Bill rolling, rotating guys, moving guys constantly. Well, you've got enough guys, even though you've got 2 guys who are really primary setters, you've got 2 other guys who can constantly move. And I mean, I think that's going to be a key, A, for keeping those guys fresh, but B, for giving different looks on the beginning of the line. Now, something else that was mentioned, I think was it Pollard that mentioned it, right? He talked about Desmond Mahmoudi. Desmond down in the Tampa area, the 3-star commit last year, comes in big, 6'3",
Yep.
290 already. So already with probably a body to play, maybe not in the best shape to play coming from high school. But you hear that name mentioned by one of the leaders on the defensive line, it makes your head pop up. And obviously Max Philpott, the walk-on.
Yeah, if you probably had to give me a third group, it would probably be those 2. It sounds like Mahmoudi is coming on pretty quickly there. Obviously, big body guy, and you like that out the gate. But the thing I look at is, you talked about a little bit conditioning wise, is he going to be able to stand up to a snap count? But as a third stringer, even with a steady rotation that Tierlink likes to employ, that third line isn't going to get a lot of run. But any run he can get this year is to our benefit. So hopefully we'll see something from him. But kudos to Max Philpott earning a scholarship, having a big off season in the weight room as well. A lot of kudos to him on that front as well. So good for him to kind of push some of these other guys forward a little bit. I mean, some of the things we're seeing him flying up the depth chart in the offseason, where he was more of an afterthought at the start of 2020.
Well, it's absolutely. I mean, I think that's where with the defensive tackle group you feel good, and even with the defensive line in general, you still feel good about it because you still, to me, I think the size of Pollard, you could play him at big end if you needed to, if you wanted to give a different look. But those groups feel good. Now the next group, there wasn't much out there about it. I don't think it shocked anybody. We look at the linebacking core, Brian. Is Hollifield and Tisdale? Is anybody shocked?
No, nobody's
Nobody's
shocked
shocked.
by
Some people are mad because
that.
Dax. A lot of people hate Dax, and other than for what, just playing solid football, not spectacular because he was a top 150 guy and playing out of position for 3 years. I mean,
I get some of the great white hype type buzz surrounding him for what I mean. It's so I get some of that, like he was 4-star Bud Foster prototype type player, and output hasn't matched expectations, but the fan base, the fans that are passionate in his corner are very passionate and in his corner, and for those that point out the flaws, sometimes that can frustrate them with the credit given relative to the output. So I get that, but at the same time, I mean, he's played solid if unspectacular most of the time.
Yeah.
And he's been playing out of position pretty much since he's been on campus.
True.
We'll see if being at his natural position for a full off season, some of the other things that were gaps in his game go away a little bit. That's my hope for him. If he can take any step at all while playing a position that's more of a fit for his athleticism, that's going to be, he's going to have a pretty good season. I'm not saying he's going to be some sort of all ACC caliber player, but I don't think we need that with some of the guys we have on defensive line and some of the guys we have on the back end. We just need him to be where he needs to be every play and make the tackle.
We need him to be the old school quarterback of the defense, get everybody lined up, make sure everybody's on their right assignment, fill the gap right, get off the block when you need to.
Yeah.
Now, Brian,
that last part's going to be the part that he needs to work on.
I'd like to see some video of it from camp. So if you're listening video, folks out there, let's see how he's doing on that. Now, Justin Fuente addressed Alan Tisdale, and I tell you what, for us that follow it closely, a lot of folks were hyped when, talked about Tisdale gaining 18 pounds, Tisdale up to 228. He played at about 218 a couple years ago and was fast. I can't see 10 pounds slowing him down that much, which is great. And then he just talked about, the focus and the maturity. He's in a completely different place than where he has been in the past. And Alan Tisdale at backer has that capability to be, in my opinion, he could be an all-ACC player. Now, is he going to be Tremaine or, a DB? Probably not. But
he could be Tariq.
There you go. That's a good way to put it. Tariq was a damn good linebacker.
Yeah.
So it's not like he's down here. We're going to get a bump up from Dax because we have a more athletic guy there. Now, by all means, would I like to see him become Tremaine? Yes, everybody would. Or a DB? Hell yeah. But I think it was great to hear that.
Yeah, and I think, the bigger thing, like the weight gain is great. It was needed to take on inside the box blocks, because regardless of what you say, anybody says, taking on blocks inside the box is different than taking on like a tight end leading out on a running play or a crack from a wide receiver or anything like that from outside the box. Playing inside the box is a different beast. You got tackles, guards, and tight ends coming at you from different angles. I mean, it's a different beast. So the weight gain is going to help him with getting off those blocks, standing up to those blocks, and not getting pushed out of the gap. Now, the other part of it, the focus and maturity, is going to be big for me, because more frustrating than anything with Tisdale's play last year wasn't he was too small or he wasn't able to take on blocks. It was sometimes he looked lost. He'd have a play where he just completely blew up what the offense was trying to do, and the very next play he'd get the wrong read and be 5 yards out of position. And that was the maddening part of his game, is that, you know, he just seemed like hadn't quite put everything together with the defense, and some of that could be attributed to the install in a COVID year, and some of that was just, it seems like maturity might not have been quite where it needed to be in terms of picking up the playbook and getting everything down pat. So seeing that the coaches are calling out specifically that the focus and maturity have definitely improved, I hope to see that on the field, because I think the kid can flat out play. I just need to see it more consistent.
Absolutely. Second teamers, Dean Ferguson. I don't think that's a shock. A lot of people have heard Dean's name more and more and more. Heard him like he's going to be one of those guys that's going to need to step up, because obviously Dax and Tisdale do play a role on special teams. Now, the shocker of this group is C.J. McCray at backer. C.J. fits the mold, right? I don't think anybody's going to deny that. C.J.'s a tall, lankier guy. And I think, you sit here, 6'3", 220. He's kind of Tisdale, what Tisdale was in 19. Obviously, if he's second team, he's done something in a pretty short period of time to get there with a few other guys on the roster. So that makes you feel good about that depth. Obviously, don't hear the name Keyshawn Artis, but we know Keyshawn can play. It's one of those groups where I feel good about going into the season.
It's a group that I feel good about, and I actually feel better about it now than I did necessarily probably even just a few months ago.
Yeah.
Especially with knowing what I know about Tisdale now. I had a really big question mark about backer because I wasn't sure what to get from Tisdale, wasn't sure how fast C.J. McCray was going to come along. And while there's still some question marks whether Dax is going to translate now in his more natural position, you feel like he's, you're not going to see necessarily, even if you don't see a boost, you're probably not going to see a drop off relative to what we had last year with Rooks. So hoping that with Tisdale really taking a step and hopefully learning to be more consistent in his play, that's going to pay some dividends with the run and not put as much on our safeties to have to make tackles in the run game, because that was a big problem last year.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of a guy making tackles, there is the nickel whip position in Jamari Connor. Jamari Connor makes tackles. And, I feel like Jay Ham kind of gushed over him, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely he was took a good amount of time with a question related to Jamari to kind of talk about Jamari the person, kind of reserved until he opens up with you. But once he does, it's hard to get him to stop talking. And that, he's kind of stepped into more of a leadership role heading into this year, being a third-year starter, kind of being one of the veterans on that unit. And it's good to see because, I mean, we're going to need leaders at all levels on the defense, and having a guy that, everybody recognizes as a dog, taking on that leadership role, that's going to be big for that defense because they're going to follow his lead, and he brings a lot of intensity when he's on the field. And Ham also noted that he seems to be getting better with kind of reading the offense pre-snap and getting a lot better in his coverage technique, which was probably the biggest weakness of his game last year was how he played in coverage.
Absolutely.
And if he can clean that up to a significant point, we're going to be in a much better place than we were last year. He had some games where he looked like the best player on the field, and he had a couple games where outside of the run game, he was struggling. And if he can clean up that element a little bit, that's going to be pretty big. Kind of put him back in that. I mean, I'll say this. If he can get a little bit better coverage, he's going to handle that position similar to how Mook handled it when he was here.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
hopefully we can see that.
And if that's been the focus, and again, the coverage wasn't terrible. It was, again, I'll put it kind of like Dax. It was solid, but there were times he had the lapses, and sometimes they're at the worst time. So again, I hear that, and to hear that's probably been his focus because he's always a thumper. He'd always put his nose in there. He'd always try to make the tackle. We take a look depth-wise: Nasir Peoples, Nike Hawkins, two younger guys. Not shocked to see Nike's name, but a little shocked to see Nasir Peoples because I feel like Nike, we'd heard a little bit more about him at the whip position. So that is the one thing about this position that scares me a little bit is we do not have the depth. And it's like you said, Chamari being a leader, Chamari being a dog, he has to stay clean. He has to stay healthy.
Yeah. I don't know who the next great nickel whip is going to be in this defense. I'm hoping it's Nasir Peoples. I know Nasir Peoples is really kind of you keep hearing his name mentioned as kind of a guy that is right on the edge of kind of making an impact. We heard his name a little bit at the start of last year, so maybe he's taken some steps and can be a good reserve. But more than likely, of all the positions on defense, Connor's probably the one spot where he's not going to come off the field unless he's injured or
Pretty
it's
much.
late in the game.
Yeah,
we got a lead.
yeah.
So, more than likely he's gonna be on the field pretty much every snap, every meaningful snap at least. So,
absolutely.
The concern there is not so much 2021; it's kind of what's next.
What's next? Absolutely. All right, let's roll on. Let's take a look at probably, again, two of the stronger positions on defense. Let's take a look at safety, where hell of a story. Devin Hunter running with the ones at the boundary safety position, and Keonta Jenkins running with the ones at the free safety position. And then Devin Taylor and Tay Daly backing them up, guys with the experience, guys with playing time. And then J.R. Walker and Jalen Stroman are the third, three deep there. There's not a hole.
That's about it. I mean, the only thing you would ask for is if you had like one guy that was like all ACC caliber that was coming back. That's really the only thing you could ask for in this group. But in terms of just experience and knowing that everyone, at least in the two deep, can handle their role, and everyone in the three deep has talent and ability, even if they're somewhat unproven. I mean, that's as solid as you can expect from that unit. So, and I'm hoping for big things from Devin Hunter. He's been back with the team, I think, for long enough at this point to kind of get his football legs back under him, and the fact that he's sitting at the one spot tells me that he's where he needs to be. Also, the fact that Tay was moved over to free
says a lot.
tells me that Devin is where he needs to be.
Absolutely. And, it's great to see Jalen Stroman already in the three deep. I don't think Jalen's going to redshirt. I think Jalen's going to be doing a ton of special teams. I think Jalen's going to have some packages. And it's just that group is just everybody has experience on the field. Hunter is obviously motivated out of his mind. And you talk about having an all ACC caliber guy. We lost him last year. Could he have been that all ACC caliber guy? He was so highly touted coming out of high school. He waited his time to get that chance. And then, what happened is what happened, about last year at this point in time. And again, it's just a great story. Let's hop over, Brian, to another room that is, again, you start going down, it's just players all over the place. Cornerback room.
Yep.
Jermaine Waller was not there Friday. He has a cold, masked up. They're taking all the precautions they can. First time really healthy starting since 19 when he was an absolute baller.
Yep.
And you know, we talk about him, the injuries last year, and everything that's happened. We're hearing him about being the leader, him talking to guys about if they get nicked. So you've got that older voice in the room that, yes, he was there last year, but when you're not on the field, it's tougher to bark, right? You're on the
Yeah,
sideline.
it's tougher to bark, and I think we talked about. I mean, the ideal scenario is probably what we were looking at pre-COVID last year, with an All ACC guy coming back, a guy that was right below that, opposite him. Even I know Waller never really got healthy last year. That's probably the ideal. This is probably the number two. This is because a healthy Waller is a baller. He's a fringe, fringe All ACC player, probably at his healthiest. So, you got him on one end. You got a true freshman that played damn good, especially kind of thrown into the fire with Dorian Strong last year.
And was an All-American. Give that credit because you don't.
Yeah,
not playing
freshman All-American. Yeah,
you don't get that.
You got Armani Chapman, solid, little bit bigger body corner. If he can improve a little bit in man-to-man coverage, he's going to be damn good as well. Breon Murray kind of does a little bit of everything. I think he's probably a little bit better in coverage, but not as good in the run game occasionally. And you got a freshman like DJ Harvey coming in, and I think he's gonna. He may not make an on-field impact this year, but having him as kind of that third or fourth line corner on one end, I think you'll see him at least take full advantage of all the snaps he can get in a red shirt year. But he might end up doing enough on special teams like a Jalen Stroman where he's gonna have another impact for us this year. So,
yeah, the other piece, and we always talk about, and you talk about taking Chamari off the field, is if you ever go against a team where you need a true nickel corner, of all those guys, I think that is DJ Harvey. Now, we'll see, because really we didn't get to see last year what Ham would do in situations where they would continuously go at a nickel back versus a true corner.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested to see if maybe he doesn't work his way up, but still he walks in the door day one. He's practicing with the threes. It means he's probably getting runs with the twos.
Yeah, I think the question let's go back a little bit to the nickel corner. Looking beyond this year a little bit, I know that's kind of off topic, but do enough other young guys at the safety position come along where you can move a Jalen Stroman to a nickel corner as well?
Maybe. I mean, and maybe on the nickel corner depth, maybe you don't worry as much about, because you do have Devin Taylor, who's kind of a Swiss Army knife that you probably could put there. You probably could not get the most out of it, but you could probably have 3 or 4 coverage sets where you'd be like, he will do this okay and we'll be okay. So maybe that's the view on it. But, again, defense kind of top to bottom, definitely feeling better than where we were just a few months ago.
Yeah, I think you feel with the defense that, you may not get the top end play that we've had in our best years, but unlike last year, there's not a lot of holes. There's not a lot of spots where you can point at and say, I'm concerned here. Defensive end, as long as we stay healthy, I feel okay about. That's probably the thinnest group in terms of what we're looking like beyond the first line. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, really, every other group you feel pretty solid about first line and at least comfortable with the second line. So,
yeah. I think you just hit it on the head. This group isn't going to be 2020 or 2018 type metrics. I think you're looking at probably 2019 or 2016. I don't think they have the 2017 in them.
No, I'd say 2016 would be. I think they're a little bit better than 2019. I don't think they maybe quite hit 2017. They're somewhere around the 2016 year, which, I mean, if we can get that and do something on offense, which we're about to get to, we might be okay.
Something on offense. Something on offense. Well, the something on offense this year, Brian, is for the first time in the tenure of this coaching staff, we do not have a camp battle. Braxton Burmeister is, locked in at the number one spot. Coach Fuente said during his presser, it's much easier on that one person to have that going on. And, even Korn said it helps expand the passing game when you just have one guy, which you get because, as me and you were talking through it, you're like, well, if it's only one guy, you don't have to have 10 plays and, well, I have to get you reps on 10 plays, but I got to get him and him reps on 10 plays. It's like you're going to get these 10 plays and these 10 plays and these 10 plays. Makes perfect sense, at least to me, but maybe I'm an idiot.
You can install your offense at a much quicker pace. You're not having, and all coaches are going to trickle in wrinkles throughout the year because you have to do that because you have to give each defense something new to look at as you go along. But in terms of day one packages and things that are kind of the bread and butter, you can have all of your bread and butter fully installed and your quarterback is fully comfortable with all of those because you're able to rep them a lot more than if you're having to truly split snaps between 2 or 3 quarterbacks. So that's only going to help Braxton because the more reps, the more comfortable he gets with the offense, with the receivers, with the nuances of picking up and knowing where the blitz is coming from in certain situations. So that's going to help. I mean, how much it helps is to be determined. But it's better than the alternative, I will say. I think
absolutely.
Of all the positions that you kind of want someone pushing, quarterback is probably the one you don't. I mean, you want somebody that's going to make sure your quarterback feels a little bit of I can't go out there and half-ass it, but you don't want a quarterback that's constantly waiting for the hook.
Yeah,
that's never good for a quarterback. Yeah. So
it's the mentality.
We finally have a mentality where a quarterback isn't worried about if I play a bad game, I'm getting yanked.
Yeah, and that's and Cornelison said it, and I'm glad he said it. It's one of those things that finally it's addressed by the coaching staff about how mentally of that player, like you said, but of the whole team. And it's not just to me, it wouldn't be just the offense, but the defense. Like, okay, who's going to be quarterback? What kind of game are we playing this week? Are we going to be doing the Notre Dame game from 2019 when we slow it to a snail's pace and try to run clock, or is it something different? Now, something else, and this is obviously physically we can see. Braxton has gotten bigger. Looks like he has gotten stronger. And he mentioned that he's not going to be shying away from any sort of contact or anything like that, but he's going to try to be smart. I like to hear that as long as we don't put him in those bad situations because, Brian, when you saw that number and he was it was like, 22.7 miles per hour? That's fast.
That's elite.
That is elite. Like the top on the NFL level was Raheem Mostert. Luckily, I'm a Niners fan. 23.3 miles an hour, and that's it. I mean, and you're talking about a quarterback who can do that.
And he may not have been running in pads like the guys in the NFL are, but
that's still fast.
Yeah.
What do you feel about the backups, Brian? Let him grab his PBR.
How long we got? No, so I feel as good as I felt about the backups last year, I feel as bad about them this year. And I'm not trying to knock Knox Kadum. I'm not trying to knock Connor Blumrick or Taj Bullock. And Taj obviously gets a pass because he's been on campus now for like 6 weeks.
Yes. No
or 8 weeks, whatever it is. Yeah. But it's just there's no sense of if Braxton goes down, we're going to be all right.
There is.
I don't have that feeling. Now, there's a scenario where if Braxton goes down, we can still win a couple games.
Yeah. We don't want that.
But I mean, we're in a worse scenario than we were in 2018 after JJ goes down.
Yeah.
And we're with Willis the rest of the way. We're in a worse scenario than that.
At least Willis, you knew he had, even though it was in Kansas and he had won one game, he had played a significant amount of snaps. You take the Clemson game away last year, Knox has played nothing. And I know Fuite's pleased. He said, I'm pleased with his understanding of the offense. And showed some videos today. He was out there running. He has a little athleticism, nowhere near BB's. But
he's got a twitch, but he doesn't have the elite speed that will really. He's not a. So let's talk about how our offense runs, right? In the running game, whether it's jet motion, whether it's whether it's other window dressing motions that we put in place. There's inverted veer, read option elements, all those things. Those things don't work as well if there's not a true threat for that quarterback to hurt the defense. And I feel like so Knox doesn't have so much of that. Connor has that, but almost zero elements of the passing game that I feel comfortable with. Yeah, then Taj is too much of a work in progress at this point because of how short of time he's been on campus and running the offense, where he probably has the highest ceiling of the three.
Oh, absolutely.
But the lack of experience is probably the barrier, right?
Well, if you talk about the lack of experience being there 6 weeks, there's a hole in the floor. Seriously, like, no knock on Taj. But look, I think he does have the high ceiling. I think he has that potential to be a Gerard Evans type figure, but he's young. He just got here. And you can't depend on that. If for nothing else, do not ruin that kid's mental makeup by saying, we're going to put you out there. And it's like, it's just different. So, yeah, don't feel great about what's behind BB. Feel great about BB. You tell me BB's healthy 12 games this year, we have a fighting chance because of those legs and because of his athleticism and now his more knowledge of the offense.
I think we'll be in most every game if Braxton Burmeister is more or less healthy for 12 games. We will be in every game. We won't win them, but we'll be in them.
It'll be
the question becomes, what happens if we don't have him? And what I see is that there might be, depending on when that would happen, there might be 3 games on the back half of our schedule that are still potentially winnable, and the rest you could pretty much say are losses.
Thank you.
Duke, Syracuse, and Georgia Tech maybe would be the only games I would say we had a fighting chance in the conference if Braxton goes down midseason and isn't available for those games.
Gotcha. All right, another place where there's no question there's the number one guy is tight end, big stone gap, James Mitchell on the Mackey list. Big thing, Fu talked about how he's improved his blocking. James is already kind of an athletic freak himself. But, he had a chance to go to the NFL. He didn't, because he knew if he came back and he improved those small areas just a hair, instead of getting drafted in the 6th or 7th round, he could be one of the first tight ends off the board.
Let's talk about something else, too, because, we heaped a lot of praise on Herbert last year, and because of Herbert and because of some of the other areas that we were struggling in offensively, Mitchell didn't quite get a season to show out as much as we would have wanted him to. Probably we're going to see less of a true emphasis on the running game this year. We're going to have to throw the ball more this year to win games.
True.
And that's going to benefit James Mitchell's stock, not only with us, but also in terms of the draft. So that's going to be big. And the fact that he's improved his blocking means that he is truly a 3-down type player. And because of his athleticism, he can be moved and lined up pretty much anywhere across the skill positions on the line of scrimmage. So That's going to be big. Funny, he mentioned doesn't have any name, image, and likeness deals yet. That was kind of shocking to me because, I mean, he's a walking, talking, like Virginia Tech image. You would think someone at this point would have put something in place, like reached out to him. I know he's not necessarily pursuing it actively himself, but you feel like he would have gotten a lot of calls at this point.
I already told you there is some rock hauling like a stone, like Yardworks or SB Cox company in Blacksburg that should just call them and say, we just want to use your face and put Big Stone Gap and then our stone company behind you. It's so easy. And he's such a likable guy too, man. I mean, especially y'all, if y'all didn't see it, go back and look at his interview and the grit definition.
He worked stick-to-itiveness in there. He worked in doing what you said you're going to do, even when you're not in the frame of mind when you said it. Like, he worked in the whole spiel that we see on those media drops from when Pete was doing the media drops for Virginia Tech football social media. We haven't seen them quite as frequently since the summer began. There might be a reason for that. I'm not sure. Anyway, moving on.
Let's look at the something he said, and then looking at the two guys behind him. He talked about the versatility of the tight end room, and with Drake and Gallo behind him, they're not him, but they are essentially one's more of a pass catching version of him, one's more of a run blocking version of him. Gallo, the run blocker, Drake, the catcher, which makes it good. But I also I hope they decide to put him outside sometimes. Because, Brian, as someone that coached, when you have someone like Big Gap, and let's say he's on the end line and he flexes, you have choices to make, right?
Yep.
As a defensive coordinator. All right, if I leave a cornerback out here and they run a jet sweep, if he gets his hands on him, he's going to set the edge, and they're going to have a lane.
Well, I've told you, man, we need to go 22 personnel. We need to get Mitchell and Gallo out there. We need to get Holston and Blackshear out there in the same package. You can put Mitchell out there at the Z opposite Trey at the X. Gallo at the Y. You got Tay at the slot, and then you got Blackshear that can work everywhere, kind of pretty much anywhere. So
do it. Brian wants a lot of 22 and a lot of 12 personnel this year, guys. You're going to hear him talk about it a lot. Speaking of wideouts, let's look at the wide receiver room. First one, not a shot, well, kind of a shot because we didn't hear his name in the press conference, but we're hearing out there Trey's the starter at the X, no shot.
No.
Jalen Jones, Thomas Jefferson, Richmond, Virginia, the RVA is the 2 deep at the X. Awesome to hear for that kid.
That's big. I'm sure some of that has to do with the Changa Hodge injury, but him coming on that fast is huge.
Yes, it is.
Because him cracking the 2 deep isn't just of circumstance. Obviously, with Changa going down, there was a need there, but him stepping up and being able to kind of navigate the debris there as it was that quick and be a 2 deep player first time on campus, that's going to be huge for him. So kudos to him. Obviously, Trey locked down the X. He's locked it down the last 3 years at this point. So that's not a big shocker. What did you think about the Z with kind of essentially Caleb Smith and Jaden Payute kind of being 1A and 1B?
We've heard, the steps Caleb Smith has taken to get better. But to hear rotating with Payute, I'm wondering if this is a thing to ease Jaden back in to that Z position, because I think it would be the right move. Make sure he's comfortable. Don't give him the full workload. Essentially, don't overwhelm him when you have someone like Caleb who's very capable of playing. But if this trend keeps up, I think eventually for the end of camp, if we continue to get the access, I think Jaden Payute is going to be one at Z. Caleb, very capable backup. But, the other thing about the Z is you've got other guys that can play it. We have a versatile room. You've got Tavion and Raheem could play the Z if needed, right? If
Yep.
needed. Now, obviously, we've got enough slot receivers between Tay, Blackshear, Lofton, and I know you have things you want them to do with Blackshear. You visualize things like you want them here, you want them out here. I want them here, I want them here. What do you think it's about the slot? Because that's where we have three guys that are really excellent at it, but also three guys that can play elsewhere if needed.
Well, I think the big thing when we talk about the slot, obviously Tavion is probably a better fit in the slot than he was playing Z, like he was forced into duty kind of the last couple years in spots. He's more natural playing from the slot position. When you look at Blackshear and when you look at Dawan Lofton, both of them slotting in as kind of the 2A and the 2B at that position. Some of that's by necessity, with Blackshear being someone that you're going to line up at truly multiple positions, not just moving him throughout the formation, but some snaps he's going to be a true running back, and some he's going to be a true slot, and some snaps he's going to be a little bit of everything, depending on what's needed from the play call and the design.
And that was from the head coach's mouth.
Yeah,
he would be
lined up all over the field.
we wrote that down, and I think Brian might be like, if he's not lined up all over the field against UNC, after a few drinks, Brian might be tweeting at the coach. You said he'd be everywhere.
I'm dropping the Morpheus gift. Show me. You say he's going to be lined up all over the field. Show me. But for real, though, having Blackshear have that hybrid role not only gives Lofton the opportunity when Blackshear is more in that running back stage of the game, Lofton being the true spell for Tay, or coming in if we're mixing up how our receivers are lined up. And we've shown that Tay can play outside, so there might be some times when Tay slides out and you bring in Lofton to be the true slot, or bring in Blackshear to be the true slot. So there's going to be things that we can do with mixing up where we deploy our wide receivers. Sure. And that's only going to be a good thing, because we can work on matchups against defenders depending on the skill set of our wide receivers, and try to create those mismatches.
Absolutely. And Dwayne Lofton's name was by both the head coach and the offensive coordinator. Again, a lot of expectations for him. This is a talented room, super talented room. I think every name we mentioned you feel like could do something, as long as they are put in the right positions with the right game plan every week. Okay. Using them wrong is what's going to make this room not pop. And I don't think you'll disagree with that. Now, let's jump on over to running backs, because I don't think it's a shock. Jalen Holston's running with the ones. And he said a couple things that I think caught your ear when he spoke to the media back last week.
Yeah, the big thing was that he was watching a lot of tape and talking with Khalil Herbert and trying to impact the outside zone game in the same way that Herbert was able to in 2020. And that's going to be big for him, because if he can, I don't necessarily expect some of the big ones, like Herbert busted, because Herbert not only had great patience in the outside zone,
very much.
Once he hit the hole and got to the second level, he was so good at making that one arm tackle miss that turned like a 15 or 20-yard gain into a 40 to 60-yard touchdown.
Very true.
He did it against NC State and Duke. He did it a handful of other times throughout the season. Big plays were kind of a hallmark for him. And I don't necessarily expect all of that from Holston, but if he can just work on that patience and hitting the hole at the right time and waiting for those blocks to set up. Sometimes with a running back, speed is great, but being able to throttle down and then quickly throttle up when the hole opens is just as important as having that raw speed.
True, man. And obviously You can tell he's very comfortable this year. Some jokes going on with Jordan Williams, him and James Mitchell in the presser, and that's something else you like to see. The guys are loose. They're throwing joke questions. They're hanging out. They're watching each other's interviews, and that was for numerous guys.
Yep.
Now, I don't know how happy you are to hear this, but Blackshear is going to get some runs with the running back ones. And but at least it was said by Cornelison that they tried to put too much on him last year and had him thinking way too much. And I think maybe that was a necessity because of depth issues. Because for me, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong, Brian, him coming in last year, we were hoping that we would be seeing him elsewhere, not at the running back position.
We were expecting him to primarily be the occasional change of pace back, but mostly lining up as the primary or secondary slot receiver.
Yeah.
And we didn't see much of that until towards the end of the season. And it seemed like towards the end of the season he got better at deploying him, but because of that they didn't use him as traditionally in the running game. And I feel like we're probably going to get a little bit of a mix of, from a receiver standpoint, what we saw at the end of last year, but they're still going to deploy him most often as kind of a number 2 running back, which isn't, as long as you're doing the other things, I don't so much mind him being a spell, especially if he, having known the offense a little bit more, working a little bit more on some of his vision, and I don't think he has bad vision. I think just sometimes early in the snap, he makes his first decision isn't always the best decision, and then kind of once you've committed to a path, it's hard to kind of redirect and make the right choice there. So just a little bit more patience. Like I said, sometimes throttling down and waiting for the blocks to get where they need to be is better than hitting the hole hard. You want to hit the hole hard on like short yardage plays and things like that, but for plays that are trying to go outside, you want the blocks to get where they're going to be, because that's going to give you the best opportunity to turn it into a big play. So hopefully he learns a little something like Holston from Herbert on that front. But I feel okay about it. I know I've said I don't want him just to be a spell back, but if the next guy we're going to talk about can carry some of that spell back load, that gives Blackshear the opportunity to truly work from the slot while also occasionally being that offensive weapon that you need, but also being that number 2 running back. And we're talking about Keyshawn King here, who is fully back with the team, seems to be the primary backup behind Blackshear and Holston, and we're going to need him to play a role this year and be consistent when he gets on the field in that role. It sounds like some of the things that were problematic last year that have been worked on. He's put on a little bit of weight, and it sounds like he's been working harder in the film room as well to understand the offense and be able to carry some of that load. So looking forward to see Keyshawn King back, because he's a hell of an athlete. We saw that in 2019 when he got a significant amount of run that year. So hopefully we'll at least see kind of something similar heading into 2021. And another name mentioned was Marco Lee, and I know this is going to make a lot of people out there happy to hear that name.
Oh yeah,
we saw him a little bit at the end of the season. Big boy, runs with power, freakishly strong.
I was for Winter, freakishly strong, different in pads.
Yeah,
and with him, they talked about him not having that time to prepare last year with COVID, kind of getting his body in shape, but again, kind of getting to know the playbook, which I still didn't like just because of his size. Like, you can find 1 or 2 power plays where you can run with him. And something else Cornelison said, and this is where you hope, going back to Keyshawn King, he wants to see 2 guys emerge. The hope is it's Jalen and Keyshawn. Because the hope is if you have those 2 guys emerge, you can have you can have Raheem Blackshear be sort of that. He's the third guy. We'll throw him in here. We'll give him a few carries. But since we're going to have him all over the place, we don't have to focus on him spelling.
You don't have to depend on him for those spell carries. You can depend on him to be an offensive weapon that can be deployed from the backfield, but he doesn't necessarily have to be that guy that's going to get you 12 carries a game and need to get you at least like 50 yards on those carries.
Exactly.
He's not going to have to be that guy.
And he doesn't need to be that way. And by all means, with Braxton as the quarterback, you can't do the powers. Braxton's not built like that. I know he got bigger, right, Brian? But please use Marco Lee correctly. I feel like he's so big that on a 3rd and 2, his body alone hitting the line could probably get you a yard and a half. And if he just gets a little push, he's going to get you the first down. Yeah. So find the right role for him.
You know who he looks like in pads, right?
Who's that?
Lee Suggs.
Ooh, don't. Ooh.
I'm not making a comparison to ability. I'm saying in pads, he looks like Lee Suggs.
I'm going to take a look at the picture after we get off here and confirm that. All right, so Brian, we have saved, of course, the best for last per you. Taking a look at the offensive line, and Cornelison mentioned during his press conference they weren't as deep as we are last year, and we were super deep last year. But he's feeling better about the depth now than we did before the spring. Me and you talked about it. We're kind of feeling the same way, except for like one position, and that's the first position. The left tackle is the 2 is Darrell Bailey, who just flipped over. I don't think that's the true 2, but he's running with the 2s to get reps.
I think he'll get there.
Perfect body.
I will say this: looking at him in practice, while a couple of those snaps his technique didn't look the best, he looks the part at this point.
He does.
He's long. He's got kind of that more thicker lower body, but that long length up top that you want from a left tackle.
Yeah.
So he's looking the part. That's a good thing. Number one. Number 2, everything I see is fixable.
That's good.
So there's nothing that's standing out and saying, okay, well, that's not going to get any better. So if he's doing the right things, technique aside, then I mean that could be something. I'm not necessarily saying if Tenuta goes down, I feel good, but I'm saying if he can take the steps from this season into next season, you at least feel a little bit better about the position going into next year. And
True.
And the big question is the move for Tenuta from right to left gonna be good enough to hold down that blind side? I think that's a big question too. I think we feel better about the left side than we do the right side, which we're going to get to, but there's still some question marks with that, especially I think regardless of how well Tenuta plays this year, you're not going to see Christian Darrisaw level play this year, so there's going to be some regression on that front. The question is how much is that going to be, and how much of that is mitigated by what Braxton Burmeister brings to the table from an athletic standpoint.
Absolutely. The question is for Tenuta is his blocking is always good. Really good grades out on that. The pass blocking also good. And the hope is he brought the level up. Again, don't expect Darrisaw. If you're expecting Darrisaw type things, you will be disappointed.
Darrisaw went to next level in pass pro from one year to the next every year.
He did.
He went from a C to a B to an A pretty much grade wise
100%
in the 3 years he played. So
now I will say this, and it goes to the next position of left guard. He's got a absolute hoss with him in Leticus Smith starting out there. So I think that will probably help Luke a ton. They're showing Jesse Hansen as the backup. We have talked about several times. He's one of those guys that needs to step up. If you tell me Hansen steps up to where he can be a true left guard fill-in for Leticus or Lacetius, I always butcher his name. I'm sorry. That's going to make us feel better. And really in that interview, Brian, or his presser, Smith's leadership is showing through. We saw it with the stuff earlier in the year with Vice and Brock and him, but you saw it even more, on that presser.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like Lasita Smith and Brock Hoffman are the de facto leaders on this line, and it showed in the interviews from early last or late last week, and it showed in some of the offseason stuff we've seen last year and in this year. I think Lasita Smith definitely took a step last year towards that leadership role, and it's only gotten stronger heading into 2021. He talked about carryover from the good year last year, and he's like, carryover isn't a thing. Got to stay focused on each game. No game or season really carries over one from the other. It always has to be about preparation and execution each week, each season. So that tells me that he's ready to lead and ready to kind of say the right things to the other guys to make sure that they're doing the right thing day to day and week to week to get those wins. And he talked about just across the board for the line, guys coming in and getting some extra film and workouts on weekends. So, I mean, that shows that, that leadership from the player leaders is trickling down to the rest of the team too. So that's good to see.
Oh, absolutely. And when he mentioned that, I think he was referring to the whole team.
Yeah.
Seeing the whole team out there on weekends and days off, still working, still grinding. And, I think we as fans, I think that's something we want to hear because I think it shows you, it means a lot to these players, and hopefully it's the understanding of what Virginia Tech football is that extra hard work, is that extra effort, is that grind. And you want to talk about grind, extra effort, the guy starting at center, Brock Hoffman, being backed up by Johnny Jordan, is that guy. Cornelison talked about, and you've already mentioned it, leader. Big leader on the line. And you can tell by the way he carries himself, very confident kid. And obviously a hard worker. Now, Brad did call him out and talk about he had to get more disciplined. How many, it felt like it was every other game he was doing a 15-yard penalty, hurting a drive. Which shows, he's got the nasty streak to him. But, Brian, you played it. Sometimes you got to pull that back because you're going to hurt more than help.
Yep.
And obviously playing center, usually one of the smarter positions. So you feel good there. You feel good you're bringing an all Big Ten guy and Johnny Jordan to be the backup. And the way it's looking, Johnny, obviously, he's there. We'll mention in a few minutes he's getting some run at right guard too. But what other things from Brock's presser kind of caught your ear?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned a couple of the big ones was, Corn talking about his leadership and his confidence. And, we know he's confident. We've seen the social media stuff, but he also said, he has hard work to back up that confidence. So I think that's what you like to see. Confidence kind of can tend towards arrogance if you're not backing it up with doing the right things while you're saying the right things and talking a big game. So he definitely backs it up. He definitely needs to rein in that, those personal fouls and some of the holdings. There was a few holdings, but I think the personal fouls were bigger just because that's up here. That's not in the course of a play. You get out of position or you make a mistake with your hand placement. It's hey, the whistle blew, but I'm still, thinking I'm a badass and I'm going to finish this play off.
Exactly.
You play hard as hell, and then when the whistle blows, you stop. That's just how it has to be. You can be as dirty as you want to be, but do that shit between the whistles. That's all I'm going to say on that. So, moving on, Brock dropped a little bit of weight this offseason.
Down to 310.
Yeah. I think that's going to be good for him, whether he ends up center, guard, or potentially sliding out to tackle like some coaches have talked about. And that I said I'm comfortable with if that's the best, if that gets our best five on the field. I don't think that's an ideal situation. If that happens, that tells me that we've got a big problem at right tackle and not necessarily that Brock is just a versatile player. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's a sign that we're in a little bit of trouble if that happens, but I'd prefer that over putting a right tackle out there that can't get the job done. So as we're talking about that a little bit, he also talked about Johnny Jordan coming in. He said he came in at the start of summer. He's worked hard. He's acclimated with the unit. Kind of came in and said and did the right things. And, they're really starting to gel a little bit there and click there.
True.
And he said he was also excited about how much work Silas Zancy got in the spring, and it feels like that's going to help. That's going to help long term, regardless of whether he ends up winning that spot at right guard or not. Because having that extra work is only going to be good for this unit from a depth perspective, because that's the biggest concern outside of right tackle is what depth's going to look like if one or two guys go down.
It's very true. And we'll hit right guard in just a second. The other piece that I want to say that caught my eye here for the presser was he did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu over the year. And if you ever heard about it, it is one of those really disciplined martial arts. So I feel like that's him knowing, like, I've got to get better. I've got to get smarter. I've got to be able to take control and tone it down, because if you remember, there were a couple drives last year. We're there. We're going to push it in. We have the defense on their heels. He makes a mistake. Him self-recognizing that and then taking up something outside of football to help with that is huge. Now, Brian, he mentioned Silas Danzy. Silas Danzy and Johnny Jordan are the 1A, 1B at right guard, backed up by the freshman Caden Moore, who I know you love with the nasty streak. I feel fine about this. I do. I'd love to see Silas get it just because he's been here so long, worked his ass off to get in that type of position. And he's also a huge human being. Yep. And you feel like there would be some intimidation against some teams.
Yeah, I mean, he's a big man. And in the run game, I feel 100% confident that he can hold down the guard position. The question is there enough discrepancy in pass pro relative to what Johnny or Caden can bring to the table that takes him out of that position and moves into a more of a reserve role? That's going to be the big question there. But I mean, he's got a nasty streak. This is a guy. Let's rewind a little bit that we were talking about. Was slotted in to start at tackle in 2019.
Yep.
Sorry, 2018.
Yep.
2018. And injury ahead of the opening game. Christian Darrisaw gets that job and never lets it go. And, Silas has kind of been a two-deep player ever since, but never quite getting over the hump. And hopefully, this is his opportunity and he's able to take advantage of it. But let's talk about Johnny Jordan a little bit more here. We didn't talk to him about him very much other than, how he's acclimated with the unit here. He's going to be a significant player for us, even if he's not a frontline guy, because he's one injury away from either starting at center or guard.
Yep.
Because he's going to be the next. If he's not starting at right guard, he's going to be the next best player at all interior line positions.
Very true. Very true. He is such a cog right now that if he can become that swing interior guy, it makes you feel better. Because we know we can rotate guys in and out, or if someone get nicked, you have a capable backup and it's big. Now, Brian, you're talking about a guy who has been waiting his turn. How about Tyrell Smith running with the run ones right as camp begins, and up to this point, I have not seen any notification that he has not lost that job, and I hope he doesn't lose that job. Because Tyrell is someone that I've seen people mention, he has some great feet for a tackle.
Yeah.
Nothing else. If somebody said, well, his run game's not great. You know what? I think our offense, even with a lesser right tackle who can be strong in the run game, I'd take his pass pro this year. Now, currently, they're putting Clements and Schick as the backup. Kind of maybe a little shocked to see Schick's name, not Clements. I know he was working over there. But do you hope the man who's 25 can hold it down?
Yeah, I do. Although I feel better about Clements than I did, I think, at the start of spring. Yeah. And the fact that you got Bob Schick at least gives you a little bit more depth. I feel like at this point, Clements is probably the true number 2, but they're giving Schick some run to, number 1, acclimate him to the system, and 2, kind of that's a position in general that needs to be pushed because there's no clear kind of leader in the clubhouse. I feel like, Zanzi had some advantage because he started the whole spring. He's a veteran. Whereas, Tyrell Smith, this is really his first run at being kind of a number one here. So he doesn't really have it locked down while some of these younger guys in a JUCO transfer are making a run at that position. So there's truly a competition, and I think working Bob Schick in there as quick as possible will only push those guys harder. If Ty Smith comes out, Juice, I'll be happy. Just because if he wins that battle, I think that he's kind of the one that's easy to cheer for because those other guys have some time in their career to get there. So this is going to be it for him. He's not. I don't think he's going to go for what will be 9th year?
Eighth. He's not Justice Reed, but I don't think he's going to go in that direction.
Yeah.
And still, do I feel great about offensive line depth? No. Do I feel?
I'm kind of with Corin. I'm concerned about depth, but I feel better than I did at the start of spring.
Exactly. So,
things I've never said before. I agree with Brad Cornelson.
Boston didn't listen. He's gonna come and be messaging you and being like, "Don't talk about Brad." Nah, we kid about that. We just call it like we see it. In our eyes in the best way we can. All right, let's roll on. Just a few other things that were kind of notated. Ham talked about that the Coastal has a ton of returning quarterbacks, and this is true. You've got Sam Howell back. You've got De'Aaron King back. You got Kenny Pickett on year 14 of throwing 15 touchdowns and 11 interceptions and averaging.
Guys, this has and always will be a Kenny Pickett hate podcast.
But, what he was really talking about was with having that many guys come back, you get to kind of look at tape and see, essentially learn the nuances, the way they like to distribute, and how to affect their plan to maybe do things they don't want to do. For us, there is some tape on Braxton because he did play in multiple games last year, so it's both ways. Yep. But it is one of those things, and you have Hal, who lost a ton of production guys. You had his 4 highest guys get drafted. King's coming off an ACL, and it's not an ACL that was torn like in September or October of last year. An ACL was torn at the end of the season. And he's saying he's going to be ready week 1 for Alabama, which, man, you would I hope.
I mean, I'm not saying it's not going to happen, and I'm not going to say he's not going to be fine. We've seen in the last few years that, ACL is more of a 6-month injury now than it was a full year injury.
True. But it's getting back up to game speed. I'm watching both every day.
Sure. Honestly, the mental is going to be where I question it the most for a guy that uses his legs as much as he does, both in the running game and the passing game. I mean, with the way they move the pocket and the way they use him to influence defenses with his feet, that's going to play a role. So is the mental going to be there? I don't think the physical is necessarily going to be a problem, but we've seen it some now with even some NFL quarterbacks. Burrow in particular, they talked about he's a little trigger shy early in camp, and I don't know if you're going to see some of that with De'Aaron King as well.
True, man. Other things was obviously, I feel like this was brought up by just about all the coaches, were the differences in 2021. I mean, it was as close to a normal offseason as possible. They got the full workouts in the winter. They got the full spring ball. They got the summer workouts working together.
Yep.
And then you're getting a normal fall camp. And, I mean, the entire student body is at 96% for Virginia Tech. I'm assuming that the football team is up there.
Well, I mean, with them requiring a exemptions aside, with them requiring vaccinations to be on campus,
You're
more than
looking
likely the football team is in lockstep with those percentages, I would imagine.
it's probably only a very small amount, if anybody, which is a great thing. Um, and another thing Ham talked about was just data in general, and more opportunities. And the one thing I think you said, Brian, that you could really hear how much was we got to sit in a room together this year and talk about things and discuss this data and what we're seeing. And Zoom's great. Things like what we do right here are great. They are. But to sit in a room with someone and read body language and different tones in the voice, and this is what they're focused on. They're in this room. Nobody's knocking at the door over there. I mean, me and you've been working from home. Me and Brian earlier today just chatted a couple minutes, and Brian's we're talking about this, and Brian's looking at an email from work, and I hear his son say something. Next thing I know is Brian's like, "I'll be there in 5 minutes. I'm doing something." I deal with it too. Can you imagine being a collegiate football coach and trying to go over this game film? Hey, take the dog out. What? Shit, what did I miss? Couldn't imagine doing that. So, to get that opportunity to actually sit in the room with your team, with your guys, with your staff, I think it can't get worse, right?
No, and I'll say something else. I mean, this is just more my observation than it is necessarily anything football related. But for coaches in the past, if I was at home and watching film, my family knew I was definitely 100% working and not to bother me.
Yes.
When all you do is work from home, that delineation between work Brian and Coach Brian and
exactly
Dad Brian that's a lot. It's a little blurred, and sometimes say what you will, you might get a call out and be like, "Hey, you got, like you said, go walk the dog." Like, okay, I'm watching film, but again, those lines get blurred when every day is sitting at home and not at the office. And the mind wanders, man. You get a lot more distracted when you've got kind of those elements, and not just work from home. I can get as much done work from home, but I get it done in a lot different ways.
True. I do.
And I think some of that took some time to get adjusted to. I'm very productive in spurts more than I am when I'm in the office. It's more of a spread out.
It's a
spread out situation. Yeah, it's more of a flow. Whereas when I'm home, I get a lot of work done, and then I kind of, all right, now I'm just gonna have time where I'm just working on maybe emails and clearing those out, and not focused necessarily on what I put on my agenda to start the day. So absolutely.
And you talk about all that, and you hear Fuente really stressing about refocusing on, and you talk about identity, building the identity, because it's kind of his go-to point. Whether you love him or hate him, it's the truth. If you don't have, and it's what you kind of in a way what you just mentioned, learning how to work from home. You have to build an identity of having to work from home with all the different variables in your own house. Last year, a ton of variables. And what we're learning is everyone's COVID experience was a little different. Everyone had to deal with it, but how it affected certain teams was different. And when you're talking about 8 weeks and not having guys, and Austin mentioned it last week, the guy who was the 2 deep at guard, who's the 3 deep at center, is asked to play center. So now you've got 3 deep center, 3 deep guard. Who knows what's going on the outside? But to his point, his big piece was camp is when we build our identity, when we get to know each other. And because it's 6 off, 6 on, 1 off, 5 on, 1 off, 4 on, 1 off, then 3, 1 off, and then it's mock game week, and then it's game week. You're slowly integrating who we are going to be as a team this year, and that's big.
Yeah.
And, if they come out here and they stink up the joint, will it be surprising? No. But at least this year you can say you didn't have any handcuffs on you, man.
No handcuffs. I mean, no excuses on that end as well. But I will say this. The team seems as loose as I've ever seen them in a good way. They seem like they're having fun, but they also seem like they're focused on proving the doubters wrong. And I'm hoping that's a good recipe for success on the field. But they seem a little bit more kind of like those older teams, like camaraderie's there. I mean, it definitely feels a little different this year. I don't necessarily expect significant differences in the win-loss column. We'll probably get to some of that in a future episode, but
absolutely,
I think this is going to be a lot more fun to watch than it was at times last year, because at times last year, Khalil Herbert aside, it was a little frustrating to watch.
I am hoping this is as fun to watch as 2016, 2017.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that's where we are. Has anything come across the wire in the last hour and 42 minutes, Brian?
Nothing that I think we should really talk about right now. I think we're good to go, buddy.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap up this episode of the Boundary Corner Podcast. I'm Curtis Wilson.
I'm Brian Siegler.
Visit our website at boundarycornerbt.com to listen to all of our episodes. And while you're there, don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and subscribe on our YouTube account. More to come on that account as we get into football season. Also, favorite podcast source, we're on all of them: Spotify, Amazon, Apple, anywhere you can think of, we're there. Click subscribe, write a review, tell us what you like, what you don't like. If you are looking to join the Hokie Club and be a part of the Reach for Excellence campaign, please visit boundarycornerbt.com/giving to get that started. As always, we let him play us in, play us out. Jason Long from down in the NRB, who had a nice showing down at the farmers market down there last Saturday.
Played for almost 3 hours, didn't he?
3 hours. if you heard a guy out there playing, it was Jason. Go support him when he gets a chance. When he has more shows, we'll let you guys down there know. As always, we thank you for listening. Let's go.
Hokies!